The Australian Curriculum 2018 states that fundamental movement skills are the core foundation for student movement and encourages confidence in physical activities, which therefore heightens active participation in task set. Pangrazi and Beagle 2014 argue that for students to become competent in specialised movement skills, their fundamental movement skills need to be developed. According to Calcott, Miller and Wilson Garn 2012, a specialised movement skill opposed to a fundamental movement skill has significant changes in students' physical growth, neurological development, body structure, and physiological development. The specialised movement skill that is being performed by the participant and will be analysed and deconstructed is a flat tennis serve. According to Kovacs and Ellenbecker 2011, a tennis serve can be characterised by 3 explicit phases of preparation, acceleration, and the follow-through that has been further developed in an 8-stage model. They give further explanation explaining that effective servers proceed to use their whole kinetic chain by simultaneously utilizing selective segmental rotations, muscle groups, and coordinated lower muscle group activation. The lower muscle groups, being the quadriceps and hamstrings, are used, and this weight is then transferred to the upper body, which therefore power is seen out through the racket and into the ball. If the chain of movements doesn't exhibit a rhythmic pattern or is not effectively linked, the serve produced won't be successfully implemented or to standard. The tennis serve being observed requires effective use of the kinetic movement sequence and Kovacs and Ellenbecker's 2011 8-stage model, which will analyze the participant's start, release, loading, cocking, acceleration, deceleration, and finish phases of the flat serve. The participant has served and a slower motion of her serve has been implemented to be able to critically analyze and observe her technique more closely. Phase 1 of Kovacs and Ellenbecker's 2011 8-stage model is the start. Muscles in shoulders and upper body movement is low, and the goal is to position body and feet to stabilize. It is evident that the participant successfully implements Phase 1 as her body is positioned and her feet are stabilized. However, she could have got lower, and this would have helped her in the loading phase. Phase 2, release. Phase 2 involves the participant to release the ball in her non-dominant hand and perform the ball toss. The participant released the ball from her non-dominant hand. However, as seen in Phase 3 photo, her ball toss was relatively too high and too far away from her head, which later affected her balance after hitting the ball. Pangrazi and Beagle 2014 reiterate the importance of balance when performing a specialized movement skill. Phase 3, loading. This stage observes how the body is positioned to create power and energy in the serve. The positioning of the participant's feet is in a foot back serving technique. This allows her to create a greater squat depth when bending in the knees and legs to obtain power later in the serve. The participant has positioned herself in the correct foot back technique and elbow has started to drop, however does not utilize the squat depth within her serve to create optimum power and balance. Phase 4 cocking involves the participant's shoulders to start rotating and the racket to start moving down towards the player's back. Cocking is a strength for the participant as she showcases effective use of shoulder rotation and drops the racket back, ready to build energy and power for the acceleration phase. The acceleration phase determines the power and speed that is produced in the serve and looks to identify strength and neuromuscular coordination. The power and acceleration in the participant's serve was observed as a weakness. She didn't obtain power in her legs in the preparation phase, and her ball toss was too high and far from her body. That inevitably affected the power behind her serve as she lost balance when trying to reach out to hit the ball and was unsuccessful in getting the ball over the net. However, her neuromuscular coordination was effective in a flat serve as all of her muscles worked and moved together to produce a rhythmically flowing tennis serve, as seen in the video performance. Phase 6, contact. The torso has a tilt and the elbow, wrist, and front knee have minimal flex when the racket has finally made contact with the ball. It is evident that this phase is a weakness for the participant as she has more than minimal flex when contacting the ball with her racket. During deceleration, the body, trunk, and arm and shoulder rotation keeps following through after contact with the ball. The participant has showcased great use of a continuous follow-through after contact with the ball has occurred. This can be seen as her arms have continued towards her body and her trunk is still rotating. The last phase of Kovacs and Ellenbecker's 2011 8-stage model is the finish. This stage involves how the participant finished the movement sequence and how she lands. It is evident that the participant's mass shifted through and across her body when she lost balance. This therefore encouraged her body to fall more forward than it needed to, which saw her finishing unbalanced and her arms too far across her body. When observing the participant, another observation identified was her hand-eye coordination. As evident in the tennis serve performed, the participant has thorough hand-eye coordination throughout the whole serve, as her eyes never leave the ball. Iacoboni, 2001, states that hand-eye coordination is detrimental to the game of tennis, as it is the key element for success, and the ability to have this coordination between the eyes and hands is a critical skill to have within the sport. As a summary of the analysis, the participant's strength in her tennis serve is her body positioning, follow through, and hand-eye coordination. Her highlighted weaknesses include her ball toss, using her leg muscles to obtain power, balance, and her arm flex when contacting the ball in the serve. Dion and Benali, 2005, imply that motor skill acquisition and abilities improve and become effortless when the skill is repeated and practiced. Chong, 2018, goes on to identify the relationship between the brain and movement and states that this practice repetition of motor skills and learning stimulates changes in the brain neurons and allows for this new information to be stored for the next time the skill is practiced. Therefore, these weaknesses that have been identified within the participant's tennis serve can be improved through constant practice and repetition of the serve. Bruce, 1999, argues that manual guidance, modifying practice, and conditioning are three of the most effective learning experiences and intervention strategies within the sport tennis. Therefore, the participant will benefit more from repetition of practicing the same movement, but simplifying the instruction and movement sequences. Bruce also states that improvement will be evident when the participant has been involved in kinesthetic feedback. Furthermore, providing kinesthetic feedback to the participant regarding her weaknesses will be implemented after she has performed the serve, highlighting the techniques that need improvement and encouraging opportunities and learning experiences that allow her to practice these skills that will benefit her future tennis performance.
Alice, yesterday when you were performing your tennis serve, some things I noticed was your ball toss. You used great hand-eye coordination, however your ball toss was a little too high and slightly too far away from your body. This caused you to lose balance when you followed through. One other aspect before we practice the toss is the power in your legs. You did position yourself really well on the court using the feet back strategy. Because your feet are in this position, it gives you a big advantage if you use that back leg behind to give you power. It will help you for the rest of your serve. So let's practice using the back leg for power, and we're going to make sure the ball toss is not too high and not too far away from our body. Yep, so let's just put our feet in the position, and we actually won't use the tennis racket for this. We'll just practice the ball toss and using that back leg for a bit of power. So bending into the back leg and throwing it up. See how that was a little too far in front? We'll try a few more times. Yep, that was good. We'll do a few more. We'll just keep practicing. Maybe a little high. One other thing I'm going to suggest is that in your serve, when your racket contacts the ball, your elbow has a greater bend than what it needs to have. So we need to practice extending that elbow and only having a slight bend. Let's just practice the serve without the ball. We're going to pretend to do a serve without the ball and really concentrate on extending that elbow a little more. So we'll get into position, bending that back leg to give power, coming through and having, yes, so that was more. Did you feel like there was more extension in that elbow?
Yeah.
We'll just try a few more. Yeah, that's good.
In essence, the participant's tennis serve has been deconstructed and critically analysed against Kovac and Ellenbecker's 2011 8-stage model and a kinetic chain movement sequence. It has showcased the participant being involved in Bruce's 1999 effective learning experiences and strategies, which provided the participant with kinesthetic feedback and opportunities for her to practice these techniques in modified conditions, for example, without the use of the tennis racket or ball. Ongoing practice of these techniques will benefit her future performance.